A group of chimeras is chasing a woman. She's rushing to escape, but soon finds herself on the edge of a cliff. Cornered, a grim look spreads throughout her face as the monsters surround her. Stealing her resolve, she uses a spell to enhance her physical capabilities and jumps off the cliff, barely dodging the fireballs thrown at her. The fall made her lose consciousness. She slowly wakes up a while later and finds herself in the forest, kept warm by a cloak. Turning around, she finds a man sitting by a campfire and happily greeting her awakening. The unfamiliar presence makes her panic and sit up. However, the sudden action makes her body ache, and she is still injured from the fall. The man acknowledges her nervousness around him, but advises her to lie down. Even if she enhanced her physical abilities, the cliff she jumped off was still quite high. It's odd. How does he know that she used magic to enhance her body? Nonetheless, she thanks him for saving her life and tries to introduce herself. He suddenly interrupts, telling her that their pursuers seem to have caught up with them, and that the amount of magical power they have isn't that of a human. She dreads her situation, as she doesn't have enough magic left to fight, and she isn't even sure if the man with her is an ally. All of a sudden, he asks for permission to kill them all. Confused, she asserts that even the guards couldn't kill the monsters. However, he pays no mind to the warning and tells her to leave things to him. His words remind her of a man named Sir Reinhard, who had the habit of saying that exact sentence. The same group of monsters arrive at their camp, drooling and cackling, ready to pounce on their target. He quickly identifies them as chimeras made by some alchemist. Although he was planning to ask if they're decent human beings, it's quite apparent that they aren't. They raise their arms and start to chant, conjuring fireballs to attack the pair. However, the man confidently smiles at them, saying they dare use fire magic against him. They launch their spells, but he doesn't move an inch. As they got near him, the fire spells simply dissipated, surprising the monsters as well as the lady behind him. Even a magical barrier shouldn't be able to negate attacks completely, so she wonders what she just saw. He then thanks them, saying he won't have to expend his own mana. Just then, a small creature engulfed in flames appears on his shoulder. He calls it Salamander, and it sends out arrows of fire at the enemies. They're shocked by the sudden attack and are barely able to dodge. The man begins an incantation for a spell, and a blazing flame roars as Salamander assumes its true form. The woman looks on in amazement, questioning if the legendary fire spirit is really in front of her. Realizing that their enemy is on a different level, the chimeras panic and run for their lives. Meanwhile, the man commands the spirit to attack, making it blast the monsters with a powerful breath of flames. Soon enough, everything before them has been incinerated, and only a huge fire is left. He looks back and smiles at the lady, who thanks him again for handling things perfectly. Looking at her closer, he crouches down and extends his hand, healing her injuries instantly. She moves around, amazed that she isn't in pain anymore, and asks if he can also use healing magic. After all that's happened, they're finally able to introduce themselves to each other. The man is Lou Brandel, while the woman is named Francisca Doomer. Both of them are magicians. They exchange pleasantries, and the woman notes how she's never heard of his name before. She thanks him for saving her once more, then asks what he's doing alone in the forest. His grandfather had actually died recently, so he decided to go out and embark on a journey by himself. Furthermore, he explains how he lost his memory about 10 years ago, and how his grandfather, someone from the Arl race, took him in. Arls are more commonly known as elves, and they were the ones who served God their food. According to Fran's memory, the elven race should be long-living, and they even have one in their school. Adding on, Lou recounts how his grandfather always said that the forest gives knowledge, and that he should befriend the many fairies and beasts in them, even if they look dangerous. Ending his introduction, he then talks about how she suddenly came falling right into his camp. She expresses how scared she was, thinking that she was about to get killed. Calming herself down, she reveals that she's a noble from the kingdom of Valentine. Moreover, she's the principal apprentice in the magic girls' schools at the capital, St. Helena. While she was training in the country next door, the monsters suddenly attacked them. Although she was able to survive with his help, the knight suffered an extremely regrettable fate. Upon hearing this, he says he'll send her to St. Helena and will protect her as a substitute for her knights. Once more, he tells her to leave it all to him. She refuses at first, saying she'll feel too bad as she was already saved once, but he asserts that he doesn't have anything to do anyway. After accompanying her safely, he shares his plan to become an adventurer. He hears that there's this city called Bartland in Valentine, and it's where all the adventurers gather. She confirms this, but becoming an adventurer means that she'll never see him again. However, she can't let that happen, as there's something she needs his help with. He begins to talk about how essential magicians are in adventurer groups, but she cuts him off exclaiming that he can't do that. He's confused as to why, and she repeatedly says that he can't. Adding on, Fran insists that his talent in magic is way too magnificent to just be an adventurer. He's slightly surprised by the claim and shares that his grandfather always called him a newbie magician. She says that this isn't true at all, then tells him to be a teacher at the Magical Girls Academy instead, adding that her mother is the chairman of the school. The abrupt proposal stuns him once more, and the offer soon turns into an assertion. He tries to calm her down, but she's way too excited to stop. The next morning, Fran slowly opens her eyes from her slumber, not remembering when she went to sleep. Lou appears with a smile, offering her some breakfast, and adding that it's nothing fancy. Thanking her for the meal, she remembers her rude behavior from the day before. Meanwhile, her savior suggests that after their meal, they return to the training grounds where they were attacked. Later on, Fran finds herself wrapped in his arms, flying over the forest with flight magic. She's amazed by his ability, but he simply says that all Arv travel like that. Scanning the area below them, he confirms that they were attacked on a large street. She enjoys the feeling of the wind, thinking about how only advanced magicians can use flight magic through the power of the wind spirit. Held tight by his arms, she suddenly notices his heart and asks why it's beating so hard. Looking a bit shy, he admits that it's his first time seeing a human girl, adding that she smells nice and looks cute. A moment of silence passes, and Fran breaks the awkwardness by asking Lou how old his grandfather is. Seeing as he's an elder of the Arv, the boy nonchalantly reveals that he's 7,000 years old and lived in the era of the gods. Hearing the less than common lifespan, she wonders if he has any titles. He innocently smiles at her, saying his grandfather is the Soul, the one who manages all Arv. Recognizing the name, she's shocked to know that the person who trained him for 10 years is the legendary leader of all the Arv. They finally reach their destination and come upon the strewn corpses of both knights and chimeras. He lays the fallen soldiers in a line, and the noble trembles in grief toward her protectors. Based on the condition of the corpses, no mercy was shown at all. He was thinking about just collecting the dropped items, but leaving them there might risk having them turn into the undead. Since they protected her with their lives, he simply cannot let that happen. She has a hard time accepting it, but Fran soon puts her hands together in prayer, and Lou chants a spell. He calls on the holy entities, asking them to grant him the necessary power and to lead their lost souls to the right place. With a final word, the area around them glows, and the bodies of the knights slowly turn to smoke. Soon enough, their souls rest and their earthly possessions are left behind. Lou then begins to take the relics they left behind, specifically an enchanted bracelet, allowing him access to a magical room that would fit a lot of things. After finishing their business there, they finally make their way to St. Helena, the capital of Valentine. Flying over the huge kingdom, he realizes that he can't drop into the city like that, and decides to land somewhere a bit farther out. Nearing their destination, Fran looks at him again and apologizes for suddenly telling him to become a teacher. He wonders if he'd be just like his grandfather. Despite understanding his desire to wander around freely, she cannot let his talent go, and asks that he at least come and listen to them. He surprises her by agreeing quickly, and saying that he also wants to listen to their story. The two arrive at the northern gate, and one of the guards recognizes her, asking what happened to her. Planning to give a detailed explanation to the captain, she asks them to accompany her to the mansion. They doubt Lou at first, but are ordered to treat him politely as the savior of their noble. In the carriage, she apologizes for their actions and explains that social classes are very important in the capital. They're very cautious towards foreigners, as St. Helena is the country's second bardland. During their conversation, they arrive at Doomer Mansion, where she's going to introduce him to her mother. When they get out of the carriage, they're greeted by the house steward, Zeman, who keeps a stern gaze at them. He expresses how relieved he is that his lady is safe, and tells her that he's already informed her mother of her return. However, he says he received instructions to let only her pass, and then asks who the man accompanying her is. Although she already explained this to the guards, the only news he knows of is that all her guards were annihilated in an attack. Since he seems adamant about the matter, she says she'll explain to her mother that he is her savior and the witness of the incident. The steward strictly refuses to let him in, calling him miserable, and telling her to drive him away with some money. He reiterates his position, ignoring her wishes. Fran begins to argue, raising her voice, but Lou puts her hand on his shoulder to calm her down. She apologizes for the rude treatment, and Zeman glares at him, furious that a miserable person like him would dare touch his lady. He lightly says he's sorry, but adds that the man's loyalty is wrong. The boy understands that the steward is being cautious after all. He's an uninvited guest, who arrive looking as miserable as he says. However, the priority in this situation should be to care for Fran. He can't believe what he just heard. Lu is sure that the man didn't report Fran's disaster to the madam, explaining that his aura changed when they were talking about the guards. He has no idea what the boy is talking about. Saying aura doesn't lie, he further states that if anything is going on, then they would both be in danger of the madam. The steward finally reaches his limit. He states that Lu has no idea how hard it was to protect the young lady and moves into attack, saying he shouldn't be spoken to in such a rude manner. The first attack is easily dodged, and so are the succeeding ones. The onlookers are shocked, as it's unusual for someone to be dodging Ximon's punches. Frustrated with his attacks being constantly evaded, he urges the boy to fight like a man. He gleefully accepts the request, ducking a punch and delivering his own. The strike hits the older fighter right in the gut, sending him to his knees. His built body was pierced so easily. Standing over him, Lu says that he lost because he didn't think about seeing through his power. Furthermore, he was too busy faking his anger to take such a strong opponent seriously. Then again, he did all of it for Fran's sake. The steward himself finds it embarrassing. The boy could have killed him easily, as he saw straight through his intentions. He faces his lady and trembles while apologizing for being rude. Before he could ask for any punishment, his consciousness faded completely. The young lady runs to him, worried, but Lu assures her that it's okay and moves in to cure him. However, a woman appears from behind, asking why her loyal subject has collapsed. The woman is Earl Adelaide Doomer, Fran's mother, and the chairman of the Magical Girls Academy. Before her daughter can explain, she uses her ability to study the situation and sees that Ximon is still alive. That being said, the attacks used against him are not ones Fran is capable of. She turns to the unfamiliar boy and walks straight at him, staring him right in the eyes. The maids try to warn her against it, but the chairwoman feels no menacing power from him at all. Despite her daughter pointing out her rude actions, she continues what she's doing and notes the boy's every characteristic. He's agile, tall, and thin. A human, not from their country, but possibly having blood from the eastern regions. Above anything else, his magic power knows no bounds and is exuding a strange atmosphere. He smiles and compliments her eyes, then returns his focus to the unconscious servant, saying he has the responsibility to cure him. Before she could protest, he began chanting for a healing spell. She's left speechless. The words he's saying are those of the spirit magic incantation, which only a few humans are capable of using. Not even the Arls, who are the best at spirit magic, are able to use the spell so perfectly. A moment later, he finishes chanting, and Ximon wakes up. The madam asks him how his injury is, and he swiftly stands up, surprised to feel no pain at all. Fran cautiously calls her mother, saying she has something to tell her. With an eager look at Lu, Adelaide tells her daughter to give a detailed explanation about the boy. They gather in her office and talk about how the steward's intentions behind his incomplete report were a complete waste of time. She shares how she would have rather spent more time studying, and her daughter complains. It's all she ever talks about, and she always goes straight to her laboratory whenever she's bored. Laughing the complaint away, the complete magic geek of a mother suddenly talks about how odd it is for a creature to use magic. Lu says that he actually collected their corpses, along with the knight's relics. Getting permission to show them in the office, they look for the bracelet enchanted with room magic. While her mother gets excited over the magic item, Fran tries to keep herself calm. She reminds herself that the monsters are already dead, and that she's accompanied by her mother and Lu anyway. While trying to convince herself that she has no reason to be afraid, the vivid image of the chimeras attacking the soldiers appears in her mind. With a loud shout, she falls to her knees, shivering and crying out to her fallen protectors. Continuing to chatter to herself, Lu approaches to calm her down, but she just grasps at his arm, digging her nails into his wrist. Adelaide tries to stop her, but he assures her that he has it under control. The girl then looks for him, and with tears still streaming down her face, begs him to never leave her alone again. He looks at her with nothing but kindness and promises to stay by her side. Touching his forehead to hers, he casts a spell to calm her down and puts her to sleep. Relieved that the outburst has been controlled, Adelaide apologizes to Lu, but he insists that it was he who was too careless. For now, they lay the unconscious girl on her bed and return to business. Back in the chairman's office, the young man puts his hand out and summons the corpses of the monsters that attacked them. She notes that they look similar to goblins, and he suggests that they might be based on homunculi, combining spirits of the dead with goblins. Wondering what their motive might be, Adelaide shares that there are many reasons, such as her lineage, power as a mage, assets, and early success. With all their family has, it's not odd for people to buy envy from others. After all, acting on pride is something noble societies are known for. It's regrettable that her daughter got involved in such incidents, all because of her. As such, she bows her head, thanking the boy for saving Fran. However, she quickly drops the professional attitude and slyly asks Lu to explain his current situation, specifically about his spirit magic. Although he already told her daughter, he doesn't really have a choice but to go through everything again. After a hefty explanation, Adelaide is left speechless on the couch after finding out that the boy can use all magical elements. While humans usually only have a main and secondary element, he was blessed by many great spirits, allowing him to use earth, wind, water, and fire elements. From what his grandfather told him, he's the fourth person to achieve this in the last 7,000 years. The gravity of the situation exhausts the chairman. Meanwhile, Lu goes on, sharing his supposed plan to become an adventurer in Valentine, wanting to see the entirety of the enormous world they're in. That was before Fran asked him to stay and become a teacher at the academy. He considers the possibility of leaving, but remembers his friend desperately begging him to never leave. Seeing him struggle with a decision, Adelaide's expression softens, and she thanks him for truly caring about her daughter. Given his magnificent talent for magic, she'd be extremely happy to have him come to the academy, welcoming his intentions to teach. However, it's his journey, so she insists that he should do what he desires. That being said, she'd much rather he stay with them and help her with a lot of their magic experiments. His grandfather always called him a newbie in magic. As such, he questions his aptitude to teach, but the chairman simply laughs. She expresses how amusing it is for someone so skilled in magic to have doubts about his own skill. Adding on, she assures him that, if he teaches just like his grandfather, then even he might find something new. Clarifying her desires, she asks him to pass on his knowledge from the Great Soul and teach students just as his grandfather taught him. Putting in a bit more incentive, she mentions Fran, who surely asked him to stay for her own reasons. Despite only knowing each other for a while, the time they spend together obviously makes the young lady happy. Her mother adds that she hasn't seen her daughter smile like that in a long while. Not wanting to pressure him, she says she isn't looking for an immediate answer, and that he can take his time to consider the offer. However, he interrupts her, saying he wants to try it out. With a soft smile, he expresses his desire to become a teacher at the Valentine Magical Girls Academy. In her deep sleep, Fran hears Reinhardt's voice, urging her to be at ease and assuring her that he'll come back. As usual, the knight tells her to leave things to him. At the Doomer mansion, Adelaide and Lu are talking about the common daily life in the academy. Aside from him, there's only one more male teacher, and all the others are women. Moving on to his lessons, the chairman explains that the instructors are in charge of their own classes and, at the same time, will have their own specialty subject to teach. The spirit magic, which he uses quite often, is normally difficult to master, meaning there aren't a lot of people who can use it. It's activated by asking the spirits for power and is extremely effective when learned. On the other side, the school focuses on teaching magic formulae, a traditional way to activate magic. Although its power is inferior to spirit magic, it's far easier to handle. The chairman lays down a pile of books, pointing out that they're the general references used in the academy. The incoming teacher takes a look at them and says that, with the exception of a few, he can do most of the spells without even chanting. He asks about the classes and how they're usually conducted. With this, she gives him the freedom to teach in his own style and expresses her trust in him. After all, he made that Fran so relax. Hearing the odd way of addressing her daughter, Lu wonders what she's talking about. Adelaide's face gets serious as she reveals how her daughter used to have a fiancé. It's a common practice in their country for noblemen to marry as soon as possible, as long as they find a good match. 12 years ago, when Fran was 10 years old, her mother decided to set her up with the second son of Countess Saru, who was 8 years older than her. Upon their engagement, the man visited her quite often, and even Fran, who was still a kid at the time, missed him a lot. However, the fateful day of the Great Destruction came. It's a disaster that visits the world for no reason, in various forms such as a fierce storm, or even a massive demon outbreak. Lu thinks to himself, and remembers that the Arv country refers to the event as God's wrath. Seeing his reaction, Adelaide guesses that he's heard of it too, at least. 10 years ago, the disaster came to St. Helena in the form of a horde of wyverns that wreaked havoc in the royal capital. At the time, Fran's fiancé was a knight in the royal guard and was ordered to go to war. Determined to protect his beloved, he answers the call, promising to come back alive after taking care of things. The wyverns were repulsed, thanks to the efforts of the royal guard. However, the knight was in the middle of battle, defending his comrades when the beast tore him to pieces and killed him in action. After this, Fran became mentally fragile, most likely because of the trauma of losing someone important. Although she used to be a bright and cheerful girl, her personality changed completely after the incident. She cried every day and spent her days shut in her room, immersed in learning magic on her own. Soon after, she graduated at the top of the magic college and had a lot of influence and connections in different directions. For some reason, she wanted to go back to the alma mater as a teacher, but never explained why. Despite her eagerness to teach, the atmosphere in her class is remarkably bleak, and she doesn't have a great reputation with the students either. As a parent, she's been very worried for her daughter's future, but thankfully, Lou showed up. She gets an excited look on her face and comes close to the young boy, insisting that it isn't just a coincidence, but a sign of destiny. Although she doesn't have the gift of precognitive magic, she has pretty good instincts. Right now, those very same instincts are telling her that he is a gift to their family and the school. In other words, he's the best visitor ever. The day passes, and Fran finally wakes up. She doesn't know how she ended up in her room, but then she remembers yesterday's events, where she was looking at the deformed bodies of her knights. Thinking that the others are in danger, she quickly gets up and rushes through the mansion. Her troubles are completely melted away when she enters a room to find Lou and her mother, greeting her a good morning, while setting up the table for their breakfast. Although a bit flustered by the scenario, she greets them back with a much better complexion than yesterday. She hurriedly asks her mother about last night, wanting to know how the conversation went. Adelaide pokes fun at her daughter, asking where her usual ladylike attitude has gone, and adding that Lou has already signed on as a substitute teacher at the school. Confirming the statement, the incoming teacher smiles kindly at her. She uncharacteristically exclaims in joy, surprising even the maids. The chairman then lets them know that they'll be visiting the school after breakfast. As they're currently on spring break, it's a perfect opportunity to give their new teacher a tour of the school. In the Valentine Magic School for Girls, Lou is amazed at the huge building, filled with beautiful magic. Fran gives him a run-through of the main building, explaining that it's 5 floors high, with the second and third floors dedicated to their classrooms. On the 4th floor are the principal and vice principal's offices, as well as the staff room, where he'll be taking his place as a substitute. They'll be starting the spring semester in exactly 3 days, and the chairman wants Lou to attend as a teaching intern for Fran. As her mother is explaining things, she gets nervous at the thought of spending time with her new friend. Just then, a woman comes in and greets them. The woman is Adeline Colette, another new teacher at the school. She's surprised to see the chairwoman and principal, as it's supposedly their day off that day. They exchange pleasantries, and the attention is quickly brought to the newcomer. Adelaide introduces Lou and Adeline to each other, as they're both incoming teachers that year. With a bright smile, he says hi to her with a familiar attitude. She's stunned, wondering why he's addressing her by her first name and acting like they're close friends. A moment of silence passes, and the chairwoman asks if something is wrong. Snapping out of her daze, Adeline keeps in mind to greet him properly, as the first impression is crucial when meeting someone new. With this, she bows a complete 90 degrees and lets out an introduction filled with flustered stuttering. Another moment of silence passes. Well aware of how embarrassing it is, she loses her spirit instantly. Fortunately, Lou encouragingly places his hand on her shoulder, saying there's no need to be so nervous. With a charming smile, he calls her a nice girl, saying it's quite apparent in her aura. Taking things from the top, they share a handshake and finally greet each other properly. Looking on, Fran catches a bewildering feeling and begins to exude a weird atmosphere herself. Adeline isn't just greeting her new co-teacher, she's speaking to him in an excessively friendly way. Furthermore, Lou is being nice to everyone. As the two are about to part, with plans to see each other again when the semester begins, they notice Fran glaring at them scarily, as if telling her to leave right away. Adeline trembles in fear. Lou simply laughs, saying she has a funny face, but lets her know that she's scaring the teacher. She hurriedly apologizes, and he tells her that there's no need to be afraid of Fran. She gets a sad look on her face, which her mother sharply notices. On the 5th floor later on, the chairwoman asks the incoming teacher to wait in the office, as she needs a moment to talk to her daughter. The instant they're alone, Adelaide gets a stern look on her face and scolds her daughter, asking if she knows why Lou was hired as a substitute teacher. She guesses that after a year of apprenticeship, they intend to welcome him back as an official teacher. Unfortunately, her guess is wrong. The young man's reason for leaving the Arlf is to explore the world at his own will. As such, they shouldn't tie him down for their own convenience. If a year goes by and he wants to return to the road, then they should send him off willingly. Fran clutches her chest, her excitement dragged down by reality. Right now, Lu is unaware of how preeminent he is as a wizard. The soul probably kept criticizing his skill, wanting to keep his student humble. With a serious look at her daughter, Adelaide asks what she thinks Lu feels for her. Not letting her answer, she states that she lost Reinhardt and might be filling that void using her new friend. The young girl remembers how similar the two are, which is why she can't stop thinking about him. Her mother frankly states that he's simply affectionate and that he isn't in love with her, adding that she's also only missing her fallen fiancé. However, love is not a logical emotion. If she wants to be loved by her friend, then she needs to talk to him more, act on her emotions, and make an effort to better understand who they are. Unlike Reinhardt, Lu is someone she met herself, so she has to decide who she wants him to be. She loses the motherly smile and tells her daughter to give up if she gets rejected, even after all that. At any rate, his magical talent is amazing, so they have to engage in friendly competition for the students and the school. As the principal, she's in the position to think about such things. They return to the office where Lu is, and Fran stares at him hard, misinterpreting her mother's advice. Later on, Adelaide tells him that the captain of the Royal Guard will arrive later and interview him about the attack on her daughter. The only thing he needs to share is his identity. He doesn't need to reveal all of his abilities, but Saint Helena is very cautious around outsiders. Deciding on what he'll be, the head of the house asks if he'd be okay to take on the label of Fran's servant. The young lady argues, but he immediately accepts, saying he'll protect her no matter what it takes. Fran is touched by his words, then reminds herself that she can't get carried away. The chairwoman is satisfied with the current setup, but is about to express her hesitations when someone knocks at the door. The voice from the other side explains that she was told to come to the office. It's Aldsvara, the vice principal, and a teacher from the Arl. Saying it's the only way, the chairwoman tells the principal to open the door. She does as she's told, and Keltri Aldsvara, a beautiful Arl, appears. Looking into the room, the new teacher comes into view. Surprisingly, Lu recognizes her and even calls her Kelly. He excitedly stands up, delighted to see a familiar face after a long time. The vice principal finally recognizes him as well. They share a look, and Fran is stunned by the situation. With this, she worries about the relationship the two have. Kelly is shocked, not believing that Lu is in front of her. The chairman asks how they know each other, and he explains that the vice principal and his grandfather are related. Adelaide is surprised at the revelation, but the Arl simply says that she never asked before. Adding on, she says nothing would have gone wrong if she only knew. The chairman was actually the person who called Kelly to the academy. Back in the day, she was rumored to be the literary woman from the Valentine Magic College. Enticed by sweet words, she agreed to teach at the Girls' Magic Academy and was able to become the vice principal in just 2 years. She becomes shy at all the praise, but Adelaide moves on and asks what their relationship is. The vice principal firmly denies any relations, while Lu delightedly shares that they trained together. Kelly is caught between the chairwoman and the boy, who are getting along while she continues to deny their close relationship. On the other hand, Fran watches over them in the corner. The vice principal, who is always stiff, is making such an odd expression. With Lu looking pleased, the two seem like they've already opened their hearts to each other. Seeing this, her confidence takes a hit. Just then, the boy's tone becomes serious as he tells Kelly that they've been really worried about her since she suddenly disappeared 5 years ago. Her expression stiffens, and so does Fran's. Adelaide sees that they have a lot to talk about, but says it's a good thing. Considering the circumstances, she instructs the Arl to present the newcomer as Fran's servant. Shocked by such an odd request, she asks why she has to be involved in the process. As the vice principal, she can use her position to make the process a bit more persuasive. After all, he is her little training partner. Seeing her strong rejection, the chairwoman hits her pride and asks if she is incapable of doing a simple task. This does the trick, as the Arl bows her head in resignation. With this, Lu sincerely thanks his old friend. In the afternoon, Kiruvin, the royal knight of the Valentine Kingdom, arrives at Doomer Mansion. Adelaide welcomes him with a hug, and he talks about how disastrous the recent incident was. He never thought that they'd be attacked by those monsters. The head of the house consoles him, saying they'll remember the knights who died protecting her daughter. Furthermore, she shares that they found someone who's willing to protect Fran as her servant. Surprised by the good news, he's brought into the reception room. The door opens, and Lu stands alongside Fran. She apologizes to the royal knight for having him travel so far. Sensing her worries, he tells her not to apologize and assures her that his knights can rest peacefully, knowing they protected her well. The young lady still looks worn out, but the relief and rest have improved her condition. Kiruvin looks over to the new servant, who appears to be dainty and incapable of wielding weapons. While questioning his credibility, Adelaide asks Lu to step forward. He complies and surprisingly kneels to introduce himself. The boy's bright eyes and humble attitude surprise the knight, who then asks to hear about the incident. After a while of explaining, he finally has a better grasp of things, and the chairwoman vouches for the boy even more, saying he came from the Arl village and was recommended by Keltri, their Arl faculty. Recognizing how strong Kelly is, he asks Lu to come close and suddenly grips his arm. The movement surprises the women, and Fran worries that it's going to be a repeat of Ximon's actions. Keruvin suddenly beams, praising his arms and body, and asking what type of training he does. Delighted by the discovery, he says he'd like him to compete with his other subjects. Before they could decide on an available date, the chairwoman called his attention back. Later on, he finishes collecting the mementos and evidence of the incident. As he boards the carriage, he looks over to the young pair and realizes that Lu has gotten rid of Fran's shadows. Fortunately, Adelaide was able to find such a man, whom even Ximon accepts. He's seen many people in his life, but Lu is exceptionally splendid. He understands the way of the night and has eyes that harbor no malicious intent at all. Considering all this, he swears to watch over the boy. The next day, Fran and her new servant are about to go to the trading firm, declining a carriage as the weather is perfect for a stroll. The steward then leaves her in Lu's care, then pressures him to, one day, tell him about the fighting technique he uses. Later on, the townspeople continuously look over, staring right at the beautiful young couple. The outsider marvels at the gorgeous town, commenting on how many people there are, and how busy they seem to be. He then shares how he's thankful that Adelaide gave him a place to stay, as it was one of his main problems. Since she's grateful to have him by her side, she excitedly says she'll buy him some nice clothes. He accepts, but adds that he prefers casual clothes, unlike the formal ones he was lent. She laughs as the outfit he was given was actually her little brother's. Just then, a man rudely comes up to them, calling the lady cute, and telling her to play with his group instead. Realizing the inappropriate situation, Lu steps between them. Annoyed by the interruption, the man throws a punch, but it's calmly caught by the servant. With one hand, he grips the fist tight, incapacitating the hooligan. Pulling his arm back, he comes close and whispers that he'd like to have a word with him in private, ordering the man to tell his henchman to stand down. He quickly complies and is brought to the back alone. Fran is left with the others, but they keep still according to their leader's instructions. Lu asks who he is, and he introduces himself as Barbubi Yuzuru. Surprisingly, he's only 17 years old. He begins to gloat that his father is the Baron, but Lu doesn't care, and simply asks what he usually does in these situations. Refusing to speak, his hand is tightly gripped again, and he finally reveals that he's a second year at the Royal Academy, adding that he likes to play with girls when he's bored. Imagining the situation vividly, he remembers the times he violated young girls along with his numerous men. Having the ability to read minds with magic, Lu sees all this and is furious at the atrocity. He grimaces in disgust, saying Yuzuru and his men have been rough with several girls, even selling them as slaves, and covering it all up with his father's name. The young man is shocked, not understanding how his secret has been found out. From afar, Fran only sees a looming fight, having no idea what they're talking about. Doing his best to keep calm, he stares the undignified man in the eye, and states that he'll be turning him into the knights or guards. With an unusually terrifying expression, Lu threatens the boy. While he might just be Fran's follower, he swears that their group, as well as his father, will cease to exist if they ever lay a finger on anyone else again. Hearing this, Yuzuru imagines his body being torn apart, something the servant can see quite well using magic. With a calm smile, he tells that boy that his imagination will become reality if he ever discloses their conversation to anyone else. Keeping his lips sealed shut, the hooligan nods his head in fear, and his hand is finally released from the vice grip. He falls on his butt, and the other boys behind him get ready for a fight. Lu simply stares at them, preparing to take them all out. Before things got further, guards arrived and ordered them to cease the commotion. Left with no choice but to stop, they all calm down, and Fran comes to check on her friend. He smiles at her, assuring her that he's fine, and adding that it's more important for her to be safe. While the two are exchanging pleasantries, a couple of girls appear from an alley, hiding and talking about the pair. One girl, Michelle, confirms that the lady is definitely the Iron Mask. The other girl, Olga, agrees, and they wonder why the dark and emotionless teacher looks like she's having the time of her life. They then set their eyes on the guy beside her, guessing from his clothes that he must be her follower. Retreating back to the dark alley, the two mischievous ladies plan a prank, wanting to put a stop to the couple, and mess with the Iron Mask teacher. Fran is thankful for the guards, as the situation didn't escalate any further. She notices Lu is distracted, so she asks him about him, but he dismisses it as nothing. However, he secretly spots two girls following them, but deems that they are harmless. They eventually arrive at the Kingsley to buy new clothes for Lu, and meet the branch owner, Marco. Fran introduces her follower, and Marco welcomes him to the store, offering his utmost assistance. He asks what the wanderer needs, and Lu replies that he needs clothes fit for teaching, as he will be a teacher at the magical school for girls. Marco lists down to prepare leather robes and ordinary clothing, which pleased him. The owner tells Lu that he needs to take his measurements, but the latter whispers something to him. Meanwhile, the two girls following Fran and Lu are looking from a distance. Marco bows, heeding Lu's request before he leaves. Fran asks her follower what he tells Marco, but Lu only sneakily says that it is a secret. They head inside the store, and the two girls attempt to follow them. However, a female attendant interrupts them, offering them to drink tea in the other room while Fran is going shopping. The two girls were then shoved into a room. Meanwhile, Lu's measurements are being taken for his clothing. Marco presents to him the materials, which are the skin of the dragon that was killed by a hero, the shop's top product. He tells them that they sell it at the whopping price of 30,000 gold coins, which surprises Fran. With that amount, one can already buy 2 mansions. There is no way Lu can afford it. However, Lu tells Marco that he already has something similar to the dragon's skin. He lifts up his sleeve and reveals the skin clothing that he owns. The two are shocked, and Fran recognizes a powerful aura from her follower's material. Lu reveals that the skin material was passed down to him by the previous soul. He then asks Marco if he can make clothes for Fran and him with his material. Marco contemplates, surprised to see a greater product than what they have. He wonders who Lu really is. He excuses himself, calling for the tradesman. After a moment, the dwarf tradesman, Alvo, arrives. He marvels at the sight of Lu's material, recognizing it as the Dragon Kings that existed in the God Ages. Fran is surprised, as it is known as a myth, and the dwarf confirms this, stating there is no price for the material. The Dragon King is the strongest in the Arlv, but it was defeated by the soul. Fran is shocked to hear this, while Lu reveals that he is from Arlv. He asks Alvo if he is willing to do the clothing. Alvo contemplates working for the Arlv he hates so much, but ultimately decides that it is a rare opportunity and grabs it. However, Lu doesn't have any idea how much it would cost. Alvo laughs, saying not to worry about the money. Marco shares the same sentiment, and is just excited to make the special clothing. Fran observes Lu. He has protected her all along and is a kind-hearted, warm person. She realizes that she likes him in every aspect. Meanwhile, in the reception room, the two girls named Olga and Michelle are still waiting. Nervous, they think about the big trouble they are in for following the principal. They might get suspended or, worse, expelled. Just then, Fran enters the room, greeting them pleasantly. The two girls are shocked, slipping and calling her Iron Mask. They are perplexed that she is smiling, far from her usual cold and dark demeanor. She apologizes for keeping them waiting and tells them that she would like to introduce them to their new teacher. Lu enters the room and introduces himself. Albeit nervous, the two girls introduce themselves in return. Fran confronts them about following her, and the students tell her they just got carried away, not planning anything harmful. Fran thinks about it, saying she won't be forgiving next time. The two girls are shocked at this, asking if they heard the right thing. The principal jokes if they prefer to be suspended instead, and the two disagree. Fran looks at them fondly, saying that it is good that they are inquisitive, but overdoing it is not good. She urges them to reflect on their actions. She then asks them to have lunch with her and Lu, who is more than happy. After eating, Michelle and Olga are both ecstatic about the delicious food. They ask their principal if it is okay for them to have a scrumptious meal with her. Fran assures them that it is not a problem, offering to teach them how to become ladies. Lu observes them, happy that everything is going well for Fran. The students look forward to being under his guidance as well. Michelle and Olga then admit that they misunderstood their teacher. They bow down, apologizing for not paying attention to her class, and not knowing that she is a wonderful person. They want to be splendid knights, and have promised to listen to her lectures, which makes Fran happy. Later, Lu is in his room when suddenly he hears a knock. Fran calls for him, and enters the room. She would like to adjust his schedule for the upcoming term, and he updates her that he has already finished reading and memorizing the textbooks. Fran is shocked that he memorized them easily. He admits that the books are quite interesting, so he reads them all at once. Fran is once again impressed with her follower, for a job well done. She then shares that she is happy that her students ask for her guidance. She may have been irresponsible in the past, but now she truly wants to be a respectable mentor. She also admits that Lu is a more powerful magician than her, making him disagree with her. He believes that she has untapped magic within her, and can see through her aura that her magic will increase. He urges her to set her worries aside, assuring her that she will become a great magician in the future. Lu offers to lend her his power as well, convincing her to believe in herself. Touched by his words, Fran can't help but hug Lu. She expresses her gratitude to him. He hugs her back, obviously thinking about something dark as his eyes become cold and menacing. The night falls, and as Fran sleeps, Lu calls for his divine spirit Shilf. He flies over the capital corner and looks at one impoverished house. He asks Shilf to come with him, and she agrees. Meanwhile, inside the hideout, the boss receives a report that Razel was threatened and, in fear, gave himself up to the authorities. The boss tells his subordinates that they can't be discovered by the royal family. His henchmen panic, but he assures them that they will hide at the Batland while they are being hunted, promising to settle scores with Lu. He then remembers how beautiful Fran is, planning to get a taste of her before selling her. The three of them laugh at their evil plan. Just then, Lu appears behind them, raging at their wicked thoughts. The henchmen recognize him and tell their boss he's the brat they are looking for. The boss throws a glass bottle at Lu, but it just goes through, intimidating the henchmen. Lu stares at them with deadly eyes, seeing the girls they killed in their memories. He looks at them with disgust, stating that they are nothing but scum. The henchmen laugh at him, but in a snap, their heads are off. Lu's divine spirit attacks the subordinates mercilessly, killing every one of them. He unleashes Undyne, attacking the others with her ice magic. Lu then approaches the boss with abhorrence, making him run in fear. He pleads with Lu to spare him, but he doesn't listen, refusing to risk Fran's safety. He uses Salamander and brutally burns the boss into ashes, sending him to the depths of hell. Lu calls for Vivi to clean up the traces of blood and send the men to the underworld. She heeds the command and starts cleaning. Lu expresses his gratitude to her, and as well as to his other two divine spirits, praising them for their work. He then calls it a night, recalling his divine spirits. The next day, Fran excitedly reports to her mother that Lu has memorized all of the textbooks given to him. Adelaide is surprised, as Fran adds that Lu can also use all of the magic techniques. The chairman is impressed, asking Lu what subject he is going to teach. She informs him about the required subjects, like offensive and summoning magic. Lu tells her that either is fine with him, making Fran ask if there is anything he is not good at. She holds his hand, catching him off guard. He says he is not good at fortune-telling, which makes her laugh. Adelaide laughs too, stating that it's normal to have something you are not good at. However, Lu is special as he is an all-rounder. Fran is shocked to hear this, especially since all-rounders are deemed to be powerful. Adelaide tells his daughter to calm down, noting that Lu has to keep his true powers a secret anyway. If his true powers were to be exposed, the royal family would use him as a hero, so he should just pick one affiliation and stick to it. He needs to choose among the elements, fire, water, earth, and air as his main and secondary aptitudes. Lu seems to be having a hard time choosing, so Adelaide offers to help him choose. However, he decides on choosing it for himself, stating that as a magician with divine spirits, he needs to determine which elements are suitable for him. The chairman agrees, and so Lu asks which elements are common for the teachers at the academy. Adelaide replies that water and earth are the common affiliation. Through this, Lu decides on taking fire and wind as his main and secondary aptitudes, respectively. The principal then requests Lu to show them his summoning magic, and calls forth his familiar. He hesitates and asks if he can show them after their meal, to which they agree. Later, after their meal, the trio enters a room to witness Lu's familiar summoning. The familiars are entities summoned from the spirit world that are usually spirits of animals used for scouting or transportation. The mother and daughter are excited, anticipating that Lu's familiar must be special, like a wolf or a lion. Lu seems to be hesitant, revealing that he can summon Cerberus and Gruffon, which are different from the common familiar spirits. The two women are shocked, recognizing the familiars as the mythical dog and eagle that inhabit the underworld. Surely, the royal capital would be in chaos if these beasts were to be summoned. Lu assures them that he will not call forth the mythical creatures, but he's not sure if his other familiar is allowed in their world. He admits that his other familiar is hated in their world, and asks for their permission to summon it. Determined, Fran tells Lu that she trusts him and believes that his familiar is a good spirit. Lu then casts his summoning spell, calling a divine creature from the underworld. Just then, a female familiar named Moraru is called forth, offering Lu her powers. Lu introduces her to Fran and Adelaide. Moraru is thrilled to meet his friends, but he states that they seem like delicious sources of magic. Lu scolds her for being rude and apologizes, to both Fran and Adelaide. Meanwhile, the principal is silently awed by his power, as he is able to summon the Morning Star, which is an underworld being. Lu introduces Mororu properly, explaining that she is a vampire and an incubus. Mororu then explains that blood-sucking for vampires is also gaining magical power. Since they don't have aptitude for magic, they get it from the blood source, and this is the same for the brethren they cursed. However, she clarifies that she won't need to suck blood because she isn't an ordinary vampire. Due to her incubus lineage, she doesn't have to obtain magic through blood-sucking. However, this doesn't mean that she can survive without obtaining magical power. Actually, she can obtain magical power by means of another method. Fran wonders about it, but Mororu states that it is easier to just demonstrate. Suddenly, she hugs Lu and grins at Fran, who is obviously jealous. She holds Lu closer, putting her hands against his bare chest and whispering his name. Fran clenches her hand at the sight of Mororu clinging onto Lu. Preying on this, the vampire asks her if she knows what the most delicious form of magical power is. Not waiting for her answer, she reveals that it's the magical power that resides within the heart, and that she always places her hand near her master's chest, close to his heart like so, to help herself to the most delectable and richest kind of magical power. The noble's eyes are stricken with emotion, and Lu grabs Mororu by her wrist, stopping her from whatever she's doing. With a serious look on his face, he insists that the vampire reconsider her behavior, as he already informed her that the people they're with are his friends. Disappointed from being scolded, her expression becomes gloomy and she politely apologizes to Fran, saying she teased her too much. Unlike lowly vampires, her species does not bear fangs for magical power, and they can live like normal humans even during the day and night. Adding on, she says she's Lu's loyal servant and nothing more. The master apologizes for the unbecoming incident and says he'll introduce her some other time. However, before he could tell Mororu to take her leave, Fran walked up to her with a determined expression and reached out her hand, wanting to welcome the vampire with open arms. They're surprised by the sudden behavior, but she reiterates how much she trusts Lu, and that his friends are also hers. She faces her mother, looking for approval, and Adelaide says it's fine, as long as she can take responsibility for her actions. With this, she apologizes for being scared at first, but adds that her actions were really surprising. Wearing a kind smile, she asks that they get along with each other. Mororu is struck by her friendliness and quickly accepts her welcome. Meanwhile, Lu shares that her parents are actually humans. The cause is unknown, but it's possible for an incubus to have two human parents, although such cases are extremely rare. 8 years ago, while he was training with his grandfather, he found the girl on the brink of death. Driven out of the village she was living in, the poor girl had no choice but to live in the forest. With the story finally clearer, Fran understands. To her, it's quite obvious that Mororu is in love with her master. However, she's been enduring it for 8 years, as demons and humans cannot develop anything further. She thinks about how they hugged and the jealousy that stabbed her heart. It was painful, but she was sure that the vampire had been in much more pain, as she'd been enduring it for so long. Her thoughts are interrupted by Lu, who bows deeply and thanks them for accepting Mororu. Looking at him, she's sure that he wasn't able to turn a blind eye. After seeing a young girl abandoned in the forest, her expression softens and she thinks about how much she likes his gentleness. Back at school, it's the day for students to return to their spring classes. Kelly begins a meeting with a short greeting and explains that, due to the recommendation of the principal and her own, a new temporary teacher will be joining the faculty for an entire year. Lu steps up to introduce himself, adding that he'll do his best to work with them all. Furthermore, Fran shares how he saved her life the other day, and that after consulting with the vice principal, they'd decided to appoint him to the position. She apologizes for bringing personal affairs into the classroom, but adds that he's also her follower. A few people come forward to greet him, and one of them is Cindy Rayan, a countess. Reaching her hand out brightly, she says he's already met her husband, who's very interested in the newcomer. After this, a small woman named Lillian Barira walks up to greet him and says she looks forward to working together. As he's exchanging pleasantries, someone bumps into him from behind. He loses his balance and falls right toward the lady. Everyone is shocked, especially Fran. Meanwhile, Lillian just shyly calls out his boldness, but doesn't seem to be disturbed at all. He nervously apologizes, and a pair of palms suddenly appear behind him. With a resounding shout of his name, Lu is sent flying away by a strong push from the principal. She scolds him, saying she can't believe that he jumped into the chest of a woman he just met, adding that the behavior is unacceptable. Behind them, Cindy and Adelaide pity the young man, as it was obviously an accident. Lillian says she didn't mind, But that's hardly the problem. When everyone has been introduced, they finally make their way to the classrooms. She ushers Lu in, who doesn't seem to be nervous at all. On the contrary, he's actually looking forward to it a lot. Since it'll be his first lecture with her, he sincerely hopes for it to turn out well. Encouraged, they open the doors to the classroom, loudly greeting everyone a good morning. However, no one responds. As usual, none of her students are paying attention, and all of them are busy with their own thing, such as chatting and dozing off. About to lose hope, she reminds herself to stay strong, and that it's their substitute teacher's first lecture after all. With a louder voice, she greets them all again, and announces the beginning of spring training. In their time together, they will be applying the knowledge they have to the new semester of learning. The only students paying attention are Alva and Michelle. Meanwhile, the others talk about Fran, commenting that the Iron Mask seems to be in high spirits and wonders what happened to her. Before beginning their lecture, she announces that there will be a new teacher who will be working as the vice homeroom advisor. Lu steps forward and introduces himself with a bright smile. The students immediately chatter, noting the words he used and saying he seemed like a commoner. Noticing their behavior, Fran becomes worried, but moves on with the lecture nonetheless. Their first lesson will be about basic breathing techniques to increase magical power and unleash magic smoothly. The most important thing is to relax the mind and focus. The breathing techniques used are basic necessities for people who study magic, and while there are many ways to breathe in and out, proper execution might be tiring for newbies. She instructs them to open their books up to Magic 1, then asks if everyone is ready. Lu, who's looking over the lecture, sees students gossiping. Despite the principal teaching so earnestly, everyone is talking so freely and doesn't even bother to turn to the page on breathing techniques. Only a select few are taking Fran seriously. Lu approaches a student who is immersed in her own thing. He stops her from writing and tells her that it is time to learn breathing techniques, not sensibility refinement. The student says that she is done reviewing the breathing technique, but Lu insists that she has to do it like everyone else. She relents and tells him to call her by her name Ori. He smiles at her, pleased that she will study the breathing technique. Lu scolds another student who is talkative in class. He tells her that she is being an inconvenience to other students and urges her to leave if she doesn't want to listen. The girl only looks at him indifferently and talks loudly again with her seatmates. Lu uses magic, and the girl immediately notices that her voice got lost. She realizes that he used silence magic on her. Lu asks her seatmate for her name, who reveals she is Josephine. He confronts Josephine, telling her to stop her useless blabbering in class. The girl attempts to slap him, but he dodges it and uses remission magic to make her fall asleep. Later, Josephine wakes up surrounded by her worried friends. She asks where she is, and they tell her that they are on the school grounds, doing breathing exercises. They inform her that Lu carried her all the way outside. She then notices that her body feels light, as if she slept really well. Lu notices her and apologizes for using magic on her. He asks her to take the lecture seriously, since Fran is doing her best for the students. However, Josephine refuses, stating that if he prostrates himself before her, then she might take the lesson seriously. Deep inside, she looks down on him for being a commoner and wants to teach him a lesson, so therefore she is beyond surprised when he refuses to follow her order. Lu replies that he is aware of the hierarchy in the country, but he insists that he should be her master because she is his student. Josephine laughs, rejecting the idea of a commoner being higher than her. Lu once again uses magic on her to make her stop, which is effective. She glares at him, calling him unfair. He only smiles, stating that they should start their class. She challenges him to escort her if he is truly a gentleman, which he accepts. As they walk together, the students notice that Josephine is being obedient, which is rare. They join Fran, who is pleased to see the progress in her class. Lu starts to discuss the breathing technique and advises them not to rely entirely on textbooks. He points out that relaxing the mind and focusing are important for magical power. He urges them to try different breathing techniques to test out which one will work for them. He then tells them to lie down and relax. Dubious, Josephine lies down, thinking that the academy is just a pastime for her, something that she has to do until her parents can decide on her marriage. However, after a few deep breaths, a gentle wind envelops her, as if someone is touching her core. Meanwhile, Fran tells Lu to wake up Josephine as their class is about to end. He asks her to wait a little more, since her spirit is still synchronizing with her. He explains that spirits connect with compatible humans after being closer to them. Josephine still has a lot to learn, but it is a good start for her. Lu requests to take in Josephine later, which Fran allows. Just then, two students approach Fran and let her know that they enjoyed the class. They excitedly express their satisfaction with learning breathing techniques. Kelly is sitting at her office and seems to be in deep thought. Suddenly, there's a knock on the door, and Lou comes in, peeking. Kelly lets him in, apologizing for calling for him on such short notice. Lou asks why he was summoned, and Kelly awkwardly admits that she wants to catch up with him. They talk over tea as the vice principal comments that his first lecture went well. It is apparent that he has become popular with the girls in school. Lou grins and Kelly asks why he is smiling. He confesses that he is relieved that she is in good spirits. Ever since she left their hometown, he has been worried about her safety. Kelly tells him that a lot has happened to her, and she inquires about the rumor that their soul, Sylvestal, has died. He confirms the bad news and admits that it is the reason he left home.